Hello and welcome, everybody. I'm so excited to have you back for another one of our Chief Architect Network live events. These are something I just really enjoy doing. Unfortunately, my co-host and partner in crime, Brian, had something come up today, so he's not available, but I wish him well. We'll have him at the next one. For those of you that this is your first session joining us, I'd love to share a little bit about what the Chief Architect Network is. We are a Fortune 500 collaboration across global chief architects. We're a nonprofit, we're a 501c6, and we're a no cost organization that's entirely volunteer, including myself. It's all about really these things: widening our perspectives together, sharing best practices, growing as leaders, developing our talent, and driving outcomes. We find in the architecture profession, a lot of what we do and a lot of what drives our success is being able to take what's outside of our organizations and figure out what are the best practices and start to help our organizations plan for and adopt the future. So, having a collaborative group of our peers is incredibly helpful to shorten the distance from new concepts and ideation to internal success. We're community led, we're vendor neutral, we're a no cost peer network of chief architects. So, if that sounds like you, then really you should be joining us. First of all, you can, of course, follow us, whether or not you're a chief architect or not. If you're interested in architecture, we're here on YouTube, we're on LinkedIn. And if you are a chief architect, you can apply to join us at chiefarchitectnetwork.com. It's no cost to apply and no cost to join any of our events. Throughout the day today, feel free to ask questions in the chat. That's one of the fun things about this thing is it's really interactive. We're going to stop what we're doing and we're going to go to what you might suggest as your questions come in. So stop in any time and share with us what you're thinking, and we'll be able to react to those. So just make sure that you do that. And without any further ado, I'd love to drop the little slide share here and bring someone far more interesting onto the stage. My friend and actual coach, Nick. He's coached me through a number of things, not exclusive to my recent job search. So I'm very excited to have him with me. He helped me through a lot of the kind of learnings needed to navigate the job environment. And he's been a friend and colleague now for a number of years as we kind of have our circles as executive coaches. Nick, would you take a moment, just introduce yourself briefly?
Yeah, Grant, thanks. Really nice to be here. As Grant said, I'm a leadership and executive coach. I spent 30 years in the med device industry. I'm an engineer by training, and so I love to work with technical people. And for the last 6 years, I've been a leadership and executive coach focusing on mid-career and beyond leaders. And again, I think my sweet spot is technical people who are on their leadership journey.
That's awesome. And I really appreciate having you here today. We have a lot of resonance on this topic, and the opportunity to bring others into the conversation is something I just get a lot of personal joy out of. We prepared a little bit of a through line. Today's conversation is really about talk, don't type. Before we pull up that little banner, maybe talk a little bit about what that message is behind that kind of tagline.
Yeah, like I said, I spent the last 6 years coaching folks, and a big part of my practice is career coaching. And I can't tell you how many people come to me and say, I've submitted applications for dozens, if not 100 jobs, and I've had very little traction. And I talk to people, and they tend to maybe spend more time online now that we have so many online tools looking for their jobs. But as we all know, especially lately, the signal to noise ratio for online applications is pretty poor. You probably are a hiring manager yourself, and when you post a job, you can get hundreds of applications and not really know where to start. And so, talk, not type is my way of saying, if you're going to spend, let's say, 5 hours a week working on your job search, I'd suggest you spend 4 hours talking to actual people and an hour online instead of the other way around, which
Wait,
is,
say that one more time. That's super powerful. How many hours talking to people? How many hours online? I think we're all doing the opposite.
I think we are. I think 80%, so if you've got 5 hours to spend this week on your job search, find 4 hours to talk to actual people and spend an hour online, not the reverse, because the return on investment is so much better and it's a hell of a lot more fun.
It really is. It really is. That's awesome. Well, as you start to step into this process, it's a little bit daunting. I mean, we've all been trained for years, like just go to a website, fill out your resume. If you're fancy, make a cover page. If you're really fancy, tailor that resume to meet the job description. If you've done those things, you trust that a fair and just process is going to bring your resume to the top of the stack as long as it's the best one. Like that is not the reality. So now that we have to kind of disillusion ourselves from that comfort of the past, how do we start to get into this world of really talking instead of typing? And you've got this first concept here of knowing yourself. How do we start there?
Yeah, I think the picture you painted is about 20 years old. I think 20 years ago, if you built a really nice resume, it would make its way to the top of the stack. But there isn't even a stack anymore. So, um, I like to start with know yourself because as mid-career leaders, right, we're not looking for our first job. We're not even looking for our second or third job. We're well into this, and we've got different priorities than we used to have, and so understanding what those are, how you're wired, where you get your energy and where you don't, like I think is really important to positioning yourself, especially when you start talking to people. And so understanding, what gives you your energy and then kind of what season is it? I think years ago it used to be that you had to get on this career trajectory that went up and to the right. And oh, right, to
Exactly.
spend 3 months applying. Oh, that really hurts my heart. But I mean, we used to feel like you had to be on this linear career trajectory. And these days, people can take side steps, they can take pauses, they can switch gears. And a lot of times, employers respect that. And so,
Yeah.
knowing yourself and then knowing this season, what do you need in this season of your life, I think is an important starting point.
Okay, that was like a total coach like knowledge bomb drop right there. Season. Hold on. Like let's talk about season. What does that mean?
Oh, I think, lives, I think, run through a lot of typical seasons, right? I mean, when you're 25 and single and you can travel 5.5 days a week, that's a season, right? Maybe,
Yeah.
married, maybe with kids, maybe kids at home and then kids away. Like those are all potential seasons, right? That you might need something different in your career to support your life, and that's really what we're here about, right? Is trying to support the life we want to live, and so I think just being real about that for yourself and for others, so that when you're having these conversations, you're talking to people who understand what you're headed for.
I think that's important. And I love that. I mean, when you think about knowing yourself, knowing your season is a big part of that. How do you really get clarity on knowing what you want and why? Like that sounds like, oh, of course. But as a coach, we help a lot of people find that for themselves. What are the nuggets somebody might be able to do in their own living room or talking to their dog to figure those things out?
Yeah, I mean, I think taking the time, right, off the hamster wheel for a few minutes to reflect. I mean, I do things with people like calendar audits. Look back at the last 2 weeks and mark the meetings that you love the most versus the ones you didn't. Right. I talk
Yeah.
to people about peak experiences. Tell me a peak experience story. When were you at your best? What was that like? What was the environment? Who were you with? Tell me about valley experiences, right? What was the job that really sucked, right? And why? And try to articulate, try to inventory those highs and lows and sort of translate those into attributes.
I love that. I also love Ahmed's comment here around, finding a job is like finding a partner, needing to see the sparks on both sides. And I love what you just said, Nick, in terms of what excited you in a day is a great way to start to lean into that.
Yeah, I mean, I think when we found our first jobs, it was much more about the work. I think mid-career and beyond, it's much more about who we're working with, right? And so that
Mm.
spark, right? And finding people aligned, right, with how you work and the culture you want to work in. All right, maybe it's Grant's bandwidth, so maybe I'll just continue. I think to Lisa's point, right, your network is the key, and using your network to uh, broaden your network. And so when I think about networking, I think about the first ring, are the people who sort of know and love you, right? These are the people who would smile when they see your name show up in a text or in an email. These are the people who you've worked with in the past. These are people who've been your allies and your advocates. And so think about that list of people as a place to start when you decide you're headed for something new, and reach out to those folks. But then, you need to reach out in a way that is specific to what you're looking for. And that's where the pitch comes in. And that's the second point on our calendar here. I think most people love networking, especially a referred network. But when you talk to somebody new, you need to help them understand where you're headed, who you are, and what you're looking for, so that they can think about somebody else you should meet. And so when I think about a good networking meeting, it's not a meeting where you meet with somebody and you say, "Hey, do you know of any jobs?" or "Can you hire me?" I think that that bar is really high, especially for somebody you've just met. Much lower bar is, given everything we've talked about, who should I meet? Who do you know that I don't yet know? Right? Who should I meet? And that can expand your first ring network into that next ring of people you've not yet met. I call that the second ring. And I think having a good pitch is really important to have that help that other person's light bulb go off and say, "Oh gosh, I just talked to this person. I just talked to Sally. She's got a new business. You should meet. I'll introduce you." And that's really the success of a good networking call, is if you can get one more name of somebody you don't yet know and a warm introduction. Because there again, we're leveraging the power of the network. If somebody you know says, "Hey, you should meet this person," how often do you decline? I mean, never, right? I don't know anybody who declines those meetings. Most people are happy to have them and enjoy them. So let's back up just a hair and talk about what I think a good pitch is. I think number one, it's not long, right? Nobody should be talking for 3 minutes or 5 minutes or what have you. I think your pitch should be an opening 60 seconds or maybe 90 seconds. And it should have a little bit about sort of the facts, where you went to school, what kind of roles you've had, what kind of companies you've been at. But I think the body of it really should be about you as a person. What gets you out of bed in the morning? What things do you love to do? What are some of the things that you're most proud of? Sharing those things helps you connect. And when you're trying to build relationships, connection is really what you're after. And so I think, especially as technical people, so I'm an engineer by training, we tend to over-index on the facts and we under-index on ourselves. And I think that's a little pivot that you can make when you're talking to people, especially people who don't know you, so that you can actually connect, as a person. Speaking of connecting as a person, I think we have Grant back. Oh, we don't have Grant's audio yet. 1 second. All right. All right. So we'll keep going while Grant figures out his tech. Um, so yeah, the idea of connecting as a person, I think is right along those lines of talk, don't type, right? Spending time talking to people about yourself, about them, about how you can help them, how and who they can introduce you to, is a great way to spend your job search time. I'm checking to see if Grant's back.
I think I might be back.
Yes, there
Yeah.
you are.
So I lost power. That's what happened. So
Wow.
that's the tech we live in today, that stuff can happen. So let's get our little thing back up here. All good. Got to hear some of it because my phone still worked a little bit at a time. But you're
Yeah.
the star of the show. I'm just here to help. So let's keep going. So sorry
Uh,
about that little interruption. And
no
Lisa,
worries.
we kind of burned you into the screen a little bit there. Sorry for that. But
No worries. So yeah, I think once you've got a good succinct pitch, right, then I think you're in a position to do this networking and start with your first ring, start with people who already know you and love you and help them understand where you're headed. Um, and then get those folks to introduce you to that second ring. And because, with all the clients I've worked with, that's really where the jobs live, is out in the second ring and out in the third ring. If somebody who knows and loves you had a perfect job for you, they've already called, right? So likely they don't have one, but
yeah.
likely they know somebody you don't yet know that you should meet.
I'm still laughing like, wow, that's never happened.
I thought it was my internet. I'm like,
Oh,
oh crap,
no.
I should have rebooted my computer.
That's all right.
Um, so maybe we can talk about networking because I think for a lot of people that feels nebulous. It feels like kind of one of those things that's important but not urgent that you keep meaning to do a better job of, and maybe you haven't for a while. Um, Again, I like to think about networking as a project.
Yeah,
You guys have all probably run great projects in your careers. You know how to run a tight project. You know how to get stuff done. So think about networking as a project. With my clients, we put together a networking plan, and that plan consists of several targets. And those targets might be different industries you're curious about, different roles you're curious about, different size companies. But we identify targets and say, okay, who can I talk to who will help me learn more about that target? Or that's, I call them swim lanes, right? And so at first, I think you're doing exploratory networking. You're trying to learn, you're trying to burn down some risk, you're trying to understand, hey, do I like this better than that? And then eventually you move into hunting, right? You move from exploratory to hunting, and your network plan serves you there as well. Um, but think of the people that you know that are in each of those swim lanes and send out those invitations. And ask for a coffee chat, ask for a virtual meeting, ask for 20 minutes. Um, and remember that no response does not mean no.
that's right.
Everybody's super busy, right? Things fall off the bottom of the calendars and the email list so quickly. I tell clients if you haven't gotten a no, feel free to send 2 or 3 reminders before you give up. Because I know I don't intend to not respond to a networking request, but it happens. It slides off the list, right? And in a busy week. So build that plan and then work the plan. And what I often suggest busy people do is just find a half an hour a week of low friction time and block it and say tend the network. And during that time, you send out invites, you confirm appointments, you send thank yous, you send reminders. You just do that work, and then when that half hour is done, put it away. Go back to your day job, and then the rest of your networking time are the meetings that you've scheduled and achieved. So I've found a lot of success with this because I work with mostly technical people, and they understand project management. They understand this kind of approach to work.
I completely agree. I'm a great point on that too, and I'll call that out. One of the other things I think is a great approach is putting yourself in an environment where it's a target-rich environment, right? So find yourself among your peers, among people who can hire you, and that often is placing yourself in executive dinners or at conferences. And honestly, if you can find some folks like I've been lucky enough to do in my search that are willing to take a bet on you and give you an opportunity to speak, well, that's the best thing possible because you're creating yourself as an object of value in the middle of a networking circle. That to me, if you can get the opportunity to use a stage, any stage, start with the ones that will have you. Because to me, the like a practitioner audience, for example, where you're speaking to maybe people in your industry that might even be levels 1 and 2 below where you want to be. That's still wonderful because you can show your industry leadership. You can have pictures taken at the event and promote those as showing you kind of in action for other leaders to see the kind of leadership you can provide in industry. Um, so I think there's a kind of a nice strategy around multifaceted types of approaches at networking, finding time on people's calendars that could hire you or might have advice or be distant from a particular role, finding yourself in circles and collaborative groups like the Chief Architect Network, where you can meet your peers, and then finding those opportunities as well to reach external audiences and expand that network. What do you think kind of resonates the most there for you, Nick?
I mean, kind of back to talk, don't type, right? Go to the conference, right? Show up in person.
Right.
Right away, showing up differentiates you from a whole host of other folks, right? And having those conversations live, having them at the coffee table, you know, doing those things, I think again differentiate you, right? Everybody's got a LinkedIn page, everybody's got a resume. Not everybody shows up, right? And again, when you show up, you have a much better chance of connecting with somebody, and you have a much better chance of being memorable. And so I think the in-person part of it is really the key, despite all the tech and tools that we have today.
Oh, I completely agree. And it's amazing how being in proximity to somebody, there's empathy built. Somebody will give you a little bit more of their time and energy and attention. Is It's a lot more there when you're physically there. Someone will offer something they wouldn't have offered if you were online.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Zoe Chance has a book on influence, and the number one rule of influence is ask in person. Nothing else trumps a request in person that's likely to get a yes. Um, so yeah, as much as sometimes I think post COVID we got a little comfy at home. We got a little comfy in front of the computer, and the idea of getting dressed up and driving downtown and finding a place to park and going to the conference feels like a high bar. But when I get clients to do that, they always come back thrilled that they did it. You
Yeah.
know, apprehensive to do it, pain in the ass maybe, but nobody comes back and goes, "Oh, that was a total waste of time." They always come back excited that they took the time and met the people.
I love that. We have one last bullet here that we haven't had a chance to touch on yet, which is really around prepare. And I think as you just touched on, for a lot of people, this doesn't just come naturally. So, what have you found with your clients that's really helped people prepare, Nick? What's helped people make jump the chasm from I know I should be at that conference to I'm booking a ticket, I'm going to be there, and I'm going to be early.
Yeah, I mean, I think if part of it is being a little intimidated, right, about what to say or what value you have to offer, then I say think about some of those things in advance. Make yourself some outlines. Create a talking point or two. Actually build your pitch. Hey, you meet somebody at a conference and they say, hey, what do you do? Tell me about yourself. Have that thing in your pocket, right? Have that thing ready to go versus making it online, right? Or while you do it, right? And yeah, putting your ego aside, asking curious questions, right? When someone says, "Tell me about yourself," that is not an invitation to talk for 5 minutes, right?
So, what do you do instead, Nick? Because you're right.
So you talk for 20 seconds and then you formulate a curious question about them, right? So I think a great conversation, whether it's an interview or a networking, is like a tennis match, right? You don't get to hold the ball. This isn't football or rugby, right? We should be batting this back and forth at a pretty high cadence. So talk about yourself for 20 seconds and say, yeah, but tell me about you. Or what did you think of that last speaker? Or, what brought you to this meeting? Right? Asking somebody questions about choices they've made, um, asking questions about them that's more than just fact based helps bring you closer, right? Helps you understand their motivations.
I
So
love that.
I think those are the kinds of things that again differentiate you, right? And when you talk to somebody who's that engaging, then you're like, oh, I could see working for this person or working with this person, or I could see this person on my team, right? And that's half the battle of getting a job, right? If you're a candidate, you've got two jobs. One is to convince the other person that you're competent. The other is to connect, right? To convince the other person they could see you on their team, in front of their boss, in front of their customer. Hard to do on a resume, a lot easier to do in person.
Yeah. We got one of the best networkers I know, George, on the line, George Wing, kind of the ambassador of Chicago. We don't see his face and picture from the LinkedIn, but George, great to have you here, my friend. Derek has asked us, please restate this point. What's your objective to attend? It's a great one, Derek. I think, I found myself, just to share a little my own experience searching this whole summer. Like I went to a local networking group, a meetup, and it was a great meetup, but it was actually a lot of small businesses in the area, selling blinds and, carpet cleaning services. And I realized a great group for that group sharing business cards, but I'm not going to find my next job here. So I think it's really important that, to Derek's point, what is your objective and finding those right groups that you need to be a part of, which, by the way, kiss some frogs, try a weird one, and then realize, okay, that one's not for me. What do you think, Nick?
Yeah, and I think, even that's a great networking question when you meet somebody. Hey, why are you here? What was your objective today? right? Know your own, but then be curious about other people. I think is, again, in this day and age, right? If you get somebody in front of you who's curious about you, that's sometimes a unique thing. We tend to run into a lot of people who are good at talking about themselves, but if you really get into a habit of being curious about others, I think that's going to connect you to the right people.
Boy, is that powerful. I found curiosity one of the most important things I needed to learn in executive coaching. It's that point where if folks in our network would like to join, a lot of us have been on this journey, and I'd be really curious to hear what their advice is. There's a second link in your Outlook invite or also in our private chat you can click on for a chance to join us live on video and share your thoughts on, the talk, don't type approach to finding your next leadership job. So just an invitation. Sometimes we get folks joining us, other times we stay in chat. But if anyone does have a perspective to share, Nick and I would love to welcome you to join us in the episode. Cool.
Nice. Well, maybe we could just talk about that last point there,
Yeah.
around prepare and practice, because I really framed that up around getting ready for the interview. So you know yourself, right? You've put your pitch together, you've networked well, and now you've got an opportunity in front of you, and you've got an interview. And I think one of the mistakes that we make is we think, oh, I've been around a long time. I know how to do this, right? And we under prepare. And I think we usually do our online homework, right? We read about the company, we read about each of the people we're going to meet, and we think, oh, I'm prepared, right? Because I've done all this homework. But we haven't actually practiced answering a question, right? We haven't practiced asking a question. We haven't maybe practiced our pitch out loud. And what I find with clients is maybe 25% of preparing is the thinking about it, but the other 75% is saying it out loud, ideally to another person, but at least to your phone when you're recording it. Because the link between your brain and your mouth is not a very good one. And we need to practice that link. And the minute you say a sentence that doesn't sound right, ooh, your brain goes about fixing it. But if you just think sentences, you won't do that part, right? And you won't be as polished as you would be if you just said a few things out loud. And so when I do interview coaching with people, we spend an hour or two practicing, role playing, recording it on Zoom, and then going back and watching. And because your brain will fix all the little foibles, will take out all the filler words, will do all the good stuff if it gets a chance to hear it. And so if I were to impart one ask is that you practice out loud. Um, you don't
I
want.
personally found that as well, Nick. I think, that advice, it's sort of like I don't remember whose quote this is, but everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the face. It might have been Tyson, right?
Mike
Like,
Tyson.
yeah. So it's the same thing in networking. And the way you can shortcut getting punched in the face in real life is to witness that punch before you've actually felt it. And a little bit of recording or practicing out loud with your family, it can really help you get tight. And it really also, one thing I'd point to is like being real, being comfortable in your own skin. I think that's super important, that this isn't the chance there. This isn't something where you just feel like you're presenting and this rigidity that can come off, right? Like that's actually counterproductive. Then the other person joins you in that sentiment, and I'm going to help this person through this difficult encounter, and then we're both going to take a sigh of relief and glad we don't have to continue this. So you got to be careful of the sentiment you're creating across the other side of that conversation.
Yeah, I mean, we're definitely not trying to create memorization or sort of rote delivery, but we're
Right.
trying to create comfort with the points that we want to make. And somebody once gave me the analogy of downhill skiing, right? When you ski down the mountain the first time, you find a path. And when you go up the chairlift and you ski down again, your point isn't to follow that exact path, right? You generally will find another path. And all the paths have value and are good. And so what we're trying to do is make it easy for you to find the path that matches the conversation you're having. But if you haven't said the words out loud, you're going to be using too many cycles trying to formulate thoughts, as opposed to be keeping focused on the other person, listening, and then delivering.
That's 100% right. It's just genuinely being in the interaction, right? You can't just be kind of floating aloof or thinking it's like a test or an exam. No one signed up to be in an interview with you in a networking session. Keep in mind, it's not an interview. It's a chance to make genuine connections and to be experiencing a real human interaction, which should also be an interview, by the way. That's good. Other thoughts from the group? Any questions you have for Nick? He's really here. He's an expert in this space. Also, one thing Nick has offered to our viewers and to our network is if you'd like 30 minutes with him to kind of harden your perspective and also perhaps even consider his support. He helped me a ton in my search journey. Feel free to use tinyurl.com, book Bartlett. I never have to say your name out loud. Help me say it correctly, Nick.
Bartelt.
Bartelt. See,
Bartelt.
it's funny. Nick and I have known each other for years, and we're on a first name basis. We're friends. So for me to like say it out, oh geez, I kind of caught myself in a funny moment there. But yeah, tinyurl.com/book Bartelt for a 30-minute interview or a conversation to kind of help you get hardened in that search. Appreciate you making that offer. I think that's incredibly kind, knowing the value I got from that.
Yeah, yeah, happy to chat with anybody and find out what you're up to and where you're at, and yeah, happy to help any way I can.
Amazing. A lot of your comments really valid. My analogy of fishing is no one ever catches just one fish. And then after Derek here, we have a question from Jack. I'll pull up. All right. So can you give us specific examples and situations in your interview answers? Or I'm sorry, this is advice. Give specific examples and situations in your interview answers. Don't be
Yeah,
vague. So I'll give you an example that I learned and was trained on in interviewing the STAR approach, right? The situation or task, that's ST, the actions you took, and the result. And there's another one that ends in O. It's the same thing. Now, this is a really important thing when answering a situational question. But what you don't want to do is convert a non-situational question into a situational answer because it can create distance with the interviewer. If they're just asking you like what you had for lunch or what you think about a particular trend in the industry, you can in that use that as a lever to move into a situation, task, answer, or action result. But you might actually kind of go like, push them away in doing so. So you want to use your EQ and figure out, is this a moment where they're trying to understand my experience, or are they trying to get to know me and to get to understand my perspective on something?
yeah, and Lisa points out, I agree. I think having specific facts and measurable outcomes is important. And then to Grant's STAR acronym, right? When I talk to people, situation task, again, that should be a tiny minority of your answer. So let's say your answer is 2 minutes long. Situation task should be 15 seconds, maybe 20. That's not the point, right? The point, the middle is the A, the actions you took and why. What did you discern? What actions did you take? How did they work? And then don't forget the R, because generally at this level, you're talking to an executive, right? Who cares about business results? And so one of the things that can happen during an interview is you spend too much time on ST, you get to the A, and then you realize, gosh, I've been talking too long, and you stop,
Yeah.
short of sharing the result. And that doesn't demonstrate your business acumen, right? So clients who are actually concerned about that, I tell them start with the R. Give one sentence about the result, then drop into the task, then the action, then restate the result. Demonstrate that you understand that the actions that you take translate into business results. And where you've got figures, percentage increases, size, scope, things like that, include them.
Derek brings up a great point here as well. Don't be afraid to ask for clarification. Um, and I'd keep those short and sweet and also not seek to be perfect, right? You don't need like the nth level detail. It's like, did you mean more like the food on the north side or the south side of India? Because they're different. Right? You kind of I would suggest a vague and short clarification, but absolutely, if you're not sure, ask. It's a conversation. It's not a test.
Yep.
Amazing. I'm curious, Nick, as we maybe start to wrap a little bit, what is some of the parting advice you might give for our viewers?
I think that you're at this point in your career, your biggest asset is your network of people that you know and know you. And so whether you're hunting for a job now or not, keep those networks close, right? And build those mutually beneficial relationships. Put money in the bank with you, put seeds in the ground, whatever analogy you want to use, long before you need them. You probably have a lot to offer your network, so let's make it a point to offer. I've got a client who this year committed to text somebody every day. One person that they hadn't talked to in a while, they're just going to send out a text and say, "Hey, what's going on? How you doing? Let's get together." And just find a way that works for you to tend your network for your benefit, but mostly for their benefit.
I love that. Um, and Nick, I just want to say thanks for sharing your expertise and knowledge with this group. I got to tell you, when I first had to go through a job search, it's daunting. I'd been employed my entire career, even in high school. To be in that kind of experience for the first time ever, it's a little bit challenging. And not just even in just what do I do, but also a little bit of identity. We identify with our work, right? So curious, maybe if you could even just share how you've helped some clients in working through some of those identity challenges that you often see as folks start to navigate this for the first time.
Yeah, I think a lot of folks were sort of brought up around the heads down, do a great job, do good work, and it'll get noticed. And I think that worked for our parents, and it probably worked for us at the beginnings of our careers. But I think today, as fast paced and so on as everything is, you need to do more than that, right? You need to be a self advocate. You need to promote stuff that you've accomplished and stuff that you do. And if there's one place where it's okay to be promoting, right, it's in the interview setting. And so what I find is that folks take their normal, humble approach into their interview, and they get out interviewed. And so, I work with clients, tell me those stories, and I'm like, yeah, that's the energy, right? That's the story. That's the accomplishment that you should feel good about sharing. And so, if there's a spectrum from super humble to, narcissistic asshole, right? There's probably room for us to move to the center, especially in an interview, right? You need to be your own advocate. That's the time and place.
I completely agree. Well, again, thanks for being with us today. Thanks everyone for joining this episode of Chief Architect Network Live. We'll have about one or two of these a month going forward through the end of the year, and it's just a great opportunity for us to get a chance to chat, share knowledge, and learn from experts like Nick. Again, if you'd like to connect with Nick, he's at um, Nick Bartelt. Got it right that time.
Yeah.
On LinkedIn. Sorry about that, my friend. And you can also spend 30 minutes with him and get to see if there might be a nice fit for someone that can help you in your search, like he's done with mine. Thanks a lot for being with us today, and just absolutely a joy to be able to spend time with you. Again, sorry about my technical difficulties, but I'm so glad I had the star of the show here to carry us forward while I was frantically trying to figure out how to get reconnected. Wish everyone a great rest of your week, and reach out if you have thoughts and want to further collaborate on what job search looks like. Take care, everybody.
Thanks, Grant. Appreciate it, everyone.